Hey, what's going on, Miami Dolphins fans? Welcome to the Fins Up Network. It's Ben Morgan, and in today's video, we're discussing NFL trade deadline, which is set for Tuesday afternoon, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Going to talk about some players I'd potentially like to see traded for, some current players I wouldn't mind seeing included in a deal, some players that have been rumored to the Miami Dolphins because you know it's rumor season and those things have been flying. But before we jump into those players, I want to hear from you as well. Drop any trade rumor predictions that you may have in the comments. And if you like the names that I'm talking about as well, go ahead and give this video the thumbs up. But I'm not going to bury the lead because, as you probably know by now, the hot rumor, Bradley Chubb and the Broncos. So the latest rumors have the Miami Dolphins as one of the favorites to land the Broncos edge rusher Bradley Chubb. And it's been no secret that the Miami Dolphins front four has been struggling at getting to the quarterback. We saw it on Sunday against the Lions, not bringing extra heat that first half, not getting to the quarterback, letting Jared Goff just sit back there, pick us apart. We need to get to the front four on a consistent basis. So Bradley Chubb's name is shooting to the top of the list. Now, Brian Burns, there was a rumor out there with the Panthers that they had turned down 2 firsts from an unspecified team. Don't have any insight on that one as well. But there's also a rumor that the Denver Broncos have a first rounder sitting on the table from another unspecified team that if they want to pull the trigger on it, they could pull it at any minute whatsoever. So since he is the hot name tied to the Dolphins right now, I'm going to spend a little bit more time on him than I am the rest of these guys. But he was the 5th overall pick from the Denver Broncos in 2018. He goes 6'4", 275. Through 8 games this season, he's got 5.5 sacks. Now, for comparison's sake, Jaelan Phillips leads the Dolphins this season with 3 sacks. Bradley Chubb's most productive season in regards to sacks came his rookie season. He jumped out to the scene. He had 12 sacks, but he has not had double-digit sacks since. Most was 7.5 in 2020s. However, there's always a but. Injuries have played a large role in his overall production because he played in just 4 games in 2019, 7 games in 2021. So when he's been healthy, he's been a very solid player, but only 1 full season in his 4 years. He's now in his 5th right now, and just 2 seasons where he played in double-digit games. So there's no doubt whatsoever that at the trade deadline, he is a top name that's being discussed. So keep an eye out for that over the next day or so. And also keep in mind that any deal for Bradley Chubb, whether it's the Dolphins, whether it's the Jets, that's likely going to come with a contract extension, with his contract being up after this season. But Bradley Chubb, the number 1 player right now to keep an eye on. But let's talk about offensive linemen as well, because this is obviously a position of interest with the lack of production we've had at some positions and obviously injury as well. Because you look at Taylor Moton from the Panthers. Looked like maybe they were going to be in a fire sale. Now they're playing more competitive over the last 2 weeks, so they're a little bit hard to predict what they're going to be doing at the deadline. But Taylor Moton plays right tackle, and Brandon Shell has been holding his own the last couple of weeks. However, you can't hate the idea of bringing in like a stud, a player of Taylor Moton's production over the last few seasons, and being able to use Brandon Shell kind of back in that reserve role. Like if something were to happen, if we need him, we feel comfortable with him right now, being able to plug and play. That's what he's been doing so far. But to be able to have the opportunity to add a guy like Taylor Moton, you got to think the Dolphins are at least paying attention to what might be available on the offensive line. I throw on the Andre Dillard on there because he was moved to a reserve role. He plays left tackle. We obviously have Teron Armstead. But with the injury concerns, with the toe concerns with Teron Armstead, we're going to be running thin. Sorry if that messed with the voice. I got a little excited there. You got to have a little bit of reserve behind him as well. So there's a potential option for him, his name being floated around in some trade rumors as well. But one name to keep an eye on as well, an interior offensive lineman playing left guard, Dalton Reisner, Denver Broncos, especially with Liam Eichenberg going down at left guard. And I know what you're going to say. Liam Eichenberg wasn't playing out of this world anyways. That injury is not going to be all that much. True, but at the same time, you still need depth. You need players. If Austin Jackson comes back, with the way Brandon Shell has been playing at right tackle, we may now have the luxury of just pushing our Austin Jackson to left guard. But who knows if Austin Jackson is that close? As of recording this, he's not back really at practice anyways yet. So we don't know what's going to happen there. So you got to keep an eye on that interior offensive line as well. And he's also in the last year of his rookie deal. So nothing guaranteed after this year, but he's a definite upgrade compared to what we currently have. So there's a few names to keep in mind in regards to the offensive line. And here's a hot name everyone wants to talk about. Tight end Mike Gesicki. Now, if I'm betting today, I am betting that he remains as a Miami Dolphin throughout the rest of the season. And one of the biggest reasons, because it's not like he's been like crushing it week in, week out production, but who has outside of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle? We are lacking a consistent pass catching option behind those two. And we've seen Mike Gesicki a little bit more involved lately. 12 catches on 18 targets and 3 touchdowns over the last 3 weeks. So obviously with him playing on the franchise tag, with him not being a great blocker, with him not being the perfect scheme fit, his name is obviously going to be one that you hear. But like I said, if I'm guessing today, I think that the Miami Dolphins would need to be absolutely blown away by a trade offer. Because keep in mind, if he walks this offseason, they're likely guaranteed that 3rd round compensatory pick. So it's going to have to be draft capital of equal or greater value to that, or for a player in a package that they would value at that pick as well. So like I said, with a lack of a third pass catching option behind Hill, behind Waddle, I think Mike Gesicki stays. Let's talk about some running backs, because Chase Edmonds obviously still not living up to that offseason contract that we had. Just 4 carries for 14 yards against the Lions. And I know the game script wasn't great for running backs in that game, and we did see Mostert go out real early. But if Miami's going to do something offensively to try to help the run game, I would personally rather it be in the form of an offensive lineman than it would be in a running back. But let's talk about these 3: Kareem Hunt, Cam Akers, and Jeff Wilson. Because Kareem Hunt rumored that the Browns would be willing to part ways with him for a 4th rounder. Obviously, they've got Nick Chubb, one of the best running backs. And with him, we've seen Kareem Hunt go from like a natural running back who can also pass catch to becoming more of a pass catching specialist, which would be a pretty good fit in this offense. But like I said, I'd rather have it addressed on. But Cam Akers. So Cam Akers enters the league his rookie year with all this hype around him. Obviously, he's got a big name, and then he hits the injury. And now all of a sudden, he's back healthy. He plays a little bit for the Rams, and then the news comes out like he's just going to be a healthy inactive, and he's likely not playing for the Rams again, and they're willing to deal him. But remember that McVay and McDaniel, they go back. They've got a history. So if there's anything out there, I don't think McVay's one that's going to try to pull one over one of his old pals. So there's probably some due diligence to be done there. Who knows what the issue is? I haven't looked into it enough to know what the true issues with Cam Akers is at this point in time. But a name out there just because he's a big name running back that's rumored to be available. But Jeff Wilson, obviously the 49ers trade for Christian McCaffrey, which makes someone likely in that position on that team expendable. And it's just connecting the dots more than anything. It's familiarity with Mike McDaniel, familiarity with the system. And think if they were to add Wilson and he steps into that running back 2 role along with Raheem Mostert, you basically have the 49ers backfield from when Mike McDaniel was there. So just kind of connecting some dots on that. Wouldn't be a sexy name, wouldn't be a big name. Could probably have him for a little bit cheaper, but a name to keep an eye on in case the Dolphins want to address the running back. Let's talk about some linebackers. Some hot and trendy names. But I got 2 points here. One, starting to look less likely that either of these guys are moved. Not saying it's impossible. Obviously, if a team blows them away, could definitely happen. But the Panthers, like I said, getting a little bit more competitive recently. And the Bears have sort of treated Roquan Smith the same way the Dolphins have treated Mike Gesicki. It's like trade rumors have been surrounding him since the offseason. But they just have been kind of anti the idea of trading Roquan Smith for a while now. So obviously they're not really all that competitive this year. Could potentially trade him if they don't think he's part of a long-term solution. But I think rather than not, they would like to keep him around. So point number 2, I said I had 2 points. Point number 2 is my gut feeling. My gut feeling is that the Miami Dolphins are kind of content with what they have at linebacker. They re-signed basically all their guys from last year to 1-year deals, and then they spent the third rounder on Channing Tindall. And I think that if they wanted to address the defensive side of the ball, they see edge rusher, they see secondary as a bigger priority than linebacker. I don't think that they see as giving away draft capital for the position of linebacker to be quite the priority that it would be for secondary, which is decimated by injury, or edge rusher, where we haven't gotten all the world's most production from. So I think that the price tag at the end of the day will just be a little bit too high for a guy like Roquan Smith or Shaq Thompson. And like I said, let's talk about that secondary, because another intriguing position with Byron Jones not looking to be super close to returning, with Nick Needham recently going on IR. Now, we have seen Xavier Howard come back over the last few weeks and continue on his impressive play. We saw Keon Cross and we saw Cater Kohu return last week against the Lions. But like it or not, they've all been dinged up at one point or another. And we have seen this secondary, for lack of a better term, struggle. I mean, look at what they did in the first half against the Lions. The bodies aren't there at a consistent basis. We can't run the zero blitz without 2 lockdown cornerbacks. So adding a cornerback here would not rule that out whatsoever. I want to talk about these 3 guys, though. Stephon Gilmore, he's 32 years old. He has signed through 2023, but there is a potential out for him after this season. That would be if you want more of a temporary fix, because we know cornerbacks, once they hit that 30-plus age range, just like running backs, just like we see from other premier positions, you're bringing in rookie wide receivers that run 4.3s, and now you're going to ask a 32-year-old cornerback to cover these aliens. Not always the greatest thing. So Stephon Gilmore would be more of a temporary fix. But then you got William Jackson. He's 30. He signed through 2023, but there is an out after this season if a team wanted to. He has made it well known that he would be willing to be dealt, not happy with his situation in Washington. And then you got Greedy Williams, who is 24 and an unrestricted free agent after this year. Now, Greedy is the name that you'd most likely want to see from this list, straight up due to like the age of things, obviously being 6 years younger than the other guys here. But like I said, outside of offensive line, I can't find another position that Miami should address more than cornerbacks if they want to add someone for the best of this year's team. Edge rusher is obviously really high on my list as well. But just watching how this defensive backfield has been dismantled by injuries, has been dismantled by the Lions in the first half. Yes, they did get a lot better in the second half. But if you want to add a player that makes you better today, cornerback is that position. You can still groom your young guys. You can still give Cater Kohu playing time and whatnot. But you just add a lot more to this team if you can get someone across from Xavier Howard that you can treat more as that lockdown cornerback and just open up the defense to being able to run more zero blitz, being able to run different concepts on defense rather than having to fall back into a zone or helping on so much with the cornerbacks there with safety help. So keep an eye on those cornerbacks as well. And lastly, I want to talk about wide receiver, but I don't think there's too much to add there. I added Jerry Jeudy to this list kind of due to fan interest and internet rumors, because Denver essentially said, look, we're not trading Jerry Jeudy. And I don't see Miami trading for a wide receiver either. Put it this way. If Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle would have been hurt recently, they would have gotten hurt Sunday against the Lions, then maybe you make a play here. But I don't think you're making a splash add at wide receiver when you've been getting so much production from those two. There's so many other pressing needs. So if you're going to give up resources, you're doing it for secondary. You're doing it for edge. You're doing it for offensive line. You don't have the need there to add another wide receiver when you're getting so much production as well. The passing game isn't an issue right now. So I love Jerry Jeudy. You don't need to add him right now. But let's talk about Cedrick Wilson to wrap this up. He had another catchless game on Sunday. We saw Braylon Sanders get activated from the practice squad, get looks. Despite the fumble, he was getting targets. We've seen Trent Sherfield continue to get looks. We've seen River Craycraft get looks and have production when he's been healthy. Hey, we drafted Eric Ezukanma in the 4th round. He hasn't been active on game day yet, but at some point in time, they may feel comfortable enough to say, you know what? Ezukanma's ready to step in as well. So with the amount of bodies that I just said that could contribute this year, maybe Cedrick Wilson becomes available to a team as well at some point, because honestly, signed him before trading for Tyreek Hill, thought he'd play a bigger role. Obviously, Tyreek comes on, the game changes at that point in time. So Cedrick isn't going to be utilized the way they probably intended him being used when they originally signed him, which kind of makes him expendable at this point in time. So you're probably not going to get much for him at this point. However, don't rule him out of being included in a trade if the Dolphins make a move prior to the deadline. But that is what I've got. Like I said, though, I want to hear from you. Drop your players, drop your predictions in the comments below, and we can carry on the conversation from there. But keep an eye out. I'll be back if they make any other moves. If they don't, we'll treat this week as we do any other week, and I'll be back the next time with my Miami Dolphins stock up, stock down candidates. But that's what I've got for today, Dolphins fans. And until next time, Fins